I'm Jim Check with Ian Burns, Now Media, and this is our election 2025 election coverage, our special coverage on policies. Wow, and my tongue is stuck in the back of my mouth, I guess, or something like that. So we're going to talk tax policy on both candidates or both platforms, the Conservative versus the Liberal, because we don't really see much policy coming from the NDP. And the Bloc really doesn't do policies for Canada.
Yeah, they've got one policy, really, haven't they?
Yeah. They don't really run. They don't run candidates outside of Quebec, so they don't really run a federal campaign.
Their policy is just no.
Their policy is for more for Quebec, less for everybody else. How's that? But let's get into the Conservatives versus the Liberal policy and the promises. The tax policy promises. What can we expect? What's the difference?
Yeah, let's have a look. I mean, this is so to assemble this little document that we're looking at right now. I looked through my emails, and people that aren't in the press, just to clarify, the political parties bombard you with emails.
Yeah.
Whenever they have a new policy, whenever they have an announcement or anything of that sort. So I just look, because I've saved all my emails from the Liberals and the Conservatives. The NDP don't send me emails. I've tried many times, but they won't do it. But I just looked, I just typed in the word tax. And for the Conservatives, I think there was about 30 emails. And that's in the last, I don't know, 2 months or something like that. And the Liberals, it was more like sort of 10 or 15. So that straight away you can see that taxes are much more of a concern of the Conservative Party, much more emphasis on taxes and tax cuts from the Tories.
Yeah, to be, I guess, humorous, the Liberals send out a lot more tax policy when they're in government, when they're adding taxes.
Well, that was certainly the way of it, wasn't it? Of the last during the last few years of the Trudeau government, it did seem a bit like that. It was
Yeah.
constant introduction of new taxes.
Capital gains tax, that was a really good one. But anyway, let's get into it. So I think the first one that dropped was Mark Carney's Liberals dropped it first, right? And they said, here's a middle class tax cut that'll help Canadians build a stronger Canada. And their tax cut amounts to $825 per year for a family. So that's a two-income family. You get about $825 a year. And they say
And that's
that
because
about,
they're bringing down the marginal rate
yeah, they say
on
about,
the lowest tax bracket by 1%, 1 percentage point.
yeah, 1 percentage point, and also it should impact about 22 million Canadians according to their calculations.
Yeah, we should add, like, this is what they've said. I mean, the only actual hard sort of concrete promise there is that they're going to reduce that rate by 1 percentage point. So it goes down from, what is it now? 15, actually? We should probably know that, shouldn't we? So it'll go down from like 15 to 14 or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's on the marginal rate. And we're going to just do head-to-head here stuff because then there's some other stuff in tax policy. But in response, the Conservatives put out a policy that said that they were going to cut income taxes by 15%, and just better wording there. Cut income tax by 15%, saving an average worker $900 a year, which is equal to their family one, or about $1,800 a year for a two-income family. So basically double what the Liberals are promising.
Yeah, that's and again, we've been talking a lot about the philosophy, haven't we? That is very much the Pierre Poilievre's philosophy, and I think probably the Conservative Party in general. It's about trying to get as much money as is reasonably possible into the hands of the people that earn it,
Yeah.
and to downsize the government in proportion to that. So that, his philosophy is very much that a dollar is best spent by the person that earns it. Like the average citizen will spend that money in a much more intelligent way than the government. Whereas the Liberal Party, maybe they're a bit more in the middle, where they believe that the government has more of a role. So therefore, they want more of that tax.
And all of these policies are kind of directed at the middle to lower class because the Tories also got the Liberals to dump the capital gains tax, which is really kind of infuriated a lot of Canadians. And they finally dumped that because it was very unpopular. That was a huge tax grab. And a lot of people actually went through and did a whole bunch of, like accounting work on that to see if they could get their capital gains crystallized before the new tax policy came in.
Yeah, it upset the executives at Shopify, didn't it? And that's
Yeah,
like Canada's kind of
it
tech
would
jewel, isn't it? It's
it
Canada's
would
biggest, most important tech company.
it would have and lots of professionals too, dentists and doctors now. Most of them are saying, well, we'll just leave then. And so I think that's why they backed off of it too. And they were warned before they introduced it. But let's just go with the promises. So that's gone. Basically, the Tories were never going to introduce because they campaigned against it. So that's I would put a win in the column there for the Conservatives. It's double what the Tories have promised, and even the way they sold it, 15% tax cut instead of a 1% tax reduction in the marginal rate. It's just a better sales package, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean that's it seems strange to say it now. The Conservatives and Polyev were sort of showing their political nous there, weren't they, and their experience. But I mean, the Carney team have improved enormously in terms of how they sell things now, I think.
You know, they just copy the Conservatives and many of them, so that's how they learned. So anyway, so then the Liberals said they're going to take, this is key, we talked about it already, we'll just recap it. They said the Liberals are going to take the GST off of $1 million and under homes, brand new homes for first-time home buyers. So a fairly small kind of like audience there, right? Because a lot of first-time home buyers don't buy brand new homes either. They buy in the used market because it's a lot safer. So, but the Liberals, or sorry, the Conservatives countered with a $1.3 million removal of the GST on homes under $1.3 million, but on all new homes. And that's even if you had a home before. So that's just on brand new homes. And then
And it's
plus
worth
they've,
bearing in mind as well, you say that the Conservatives counted, but this is originally a Conservative policy, isn't it? So the
yes,
Conservatives
yes.
put one out first, then the Liberals, and then the Conservatives came back again with an
Yeah.
improved offer.
This this was the copied policy that, well, you and I pitched it to Sean Fraser when we interviewed him, and he said no at the
Yeah, he
time.
was obviously he was keen, wasn't he?
There you go. So again, another win, I think, in the Conservative column there because again, bigger audience because it's still all brand new homes under 1.3 million. So that would be a lot more Canadians affected with that policy as opposed to just a small group. Uh, and we're talking about the taxpayer themselves because the Liberals did do a bunch of cuts or easy financing for home building for corporations that don't really affect the consumer, the Canadian taxpayer
Yeah,
directly.
about
Directly.
$35 billion or so, isn't it?
Yeah. So what else we got in the Liberal column for tax cuts or plans? So we got they're cutting. Well, they canceled the consumer carbon tax. I would put the win in the Conservative column for that either as well, because they surely didn't cancel it because they found religion. They canceled it because that was another success by the Conservatives. It was what the Liberals have actually put out many pieces in saying that blaming Pierre Poilievre and saying they canceled it because he made it a divisive issue. But now they're trying to pretend that that was their own doing. They should go back and read their previous press releases.
Well, or just listen to Justin Trudeau, Chrystia Freeland, Stephen Guilbeault, any of them really, in delightfully speaking about it as they used to do.
Yeah, well, even in this, they said, as of today, we're canceling the divisive carbon tax. Well, didn't you make it divisive? Isn't it your divisive tax cut or carbon tax?
Well, it seems to me that the way that they've taken this L, as the kids would say these days, the way that they've kind of processed this defeat is by kind of saying, and David Eby's doing this as well. They kind of say the policy was great and it actually really helped us save the planet. Don't really know how that makes sense, but that's what they say. But nasty Pierre Polyev and nasty other people who are all basically Nazis, they spread propaganda about it, that evil thing called misinformation, and then turned it into this divisive, toxic issue, and therefore we had to get rid of it. That's in essence what I'm hearing from a lot of them, and that's what I've heard from Gilboa, and that's what I've heard from EB, and that's kind of a little bit what I'm also hearing from Mark Carney, though he's a much slicker customer than either of those people.
Well, I guess I don't know what bucket we fall in because we've been talking about that it's not good for Canada. It's a compounding carbon tax that drove inflation. We're going to see that reflection here as we see the next inflation numbers come as the price of gas has calmed down. It's probably going to take a couple of months for that to actually play out. So we'll see that kind of play out here in the next little while. Yeah, Rommel, you want to go see what's going on out there? Also, the Liberals are promising that MURB, the multiple unit rental building tax incentive, again for corporations, not for the individuals, so we'll leave that. And that was one that the Canada canceled way back in the 80s because it said it was too difficult to run and it really only benefited developers.
Yeah,
The other thing,
that's quite controversial on that, and some
uh,
people seem to think that it'll work wonders, but then other people say, yeah, the sort of the numbers are in, like we have the studies and it
uh,
didn't work. So
we did it
that
before.
is a divisive one, isn't it?
We did it before. Winners were the developers. They also are going to expand the labor mobility tax deduction to ensure workers who travel more than 120 kilometers from their home to job can deduct more expenses. It's pretty vague other than that. And then Polyev has come up. Paul will talk about that after. They're also going to increase the GIS by 5% for 1 year only, providing up to $652. Sounds like a David Eby plan where they promise you just like $650 or $1,000, and then when it comes time to get it, didn't they also promise, the Liberals promised just before they, or when they, just before they prorogued government, what were we supposed to get? 750?
I think it was 250, wasn't it?
Oh, it was 250. You're correct. $250
Yeah.
each, and then
By the
plus.
way, I have to rewind a little bit and look up this document here, where a press release for the listeners, a press release from the Liberal Party, which says, while Pierre Poilievre wants to make divisive cuts that will take money out of your pocket. That doesn't really doesn't really make any sense to me. Pierre Poilievre is going to make tax cuts that will take money out of your pocket. Not sure I
That's
understand that one, but
that's
that's kind
oxy.
of the logic that we're hearing, is that
Hey, that's oxymoronic, no? So,
he's going
so
to cut taxes and that'll take money out of your pocket somehow. I don't quite
so,
know how yet, but it
so
will.
if you look at the liberal carbon tax, we're going to take money out of your pocket and we're going to put some of it back into some pockets. Maybe that's how you're supposed to do it.
I think I mean, to try and steel man the liberal argument here, I think what they're trying to say is he'll make the cuts, and the cuts to things like dental care and childcare, which he
But he's
said
already
he's not going
said
to do.
he's
But
not
that
going
I
to do
think
it.
that's the implication, and that will cost you money. I think that's their argument there, actually. But still,
And,
it reads quite funny, doesn't it, when you just look at it in isolation there.
and again, another one for corporations. They're going to defer the corporate income tax payments for GST from April 2nd to June 30th. Okay.
That's a very short-lived policy, that one, isn't it?
I'm going to tell you right now as an accountant, if you're relying on your GST to finance your company, you're probably in really big trouble. And again, no real help. It's just a deferral. Like, I mean, you get another couple months to not pay your GST bill, but then there'll be more GST due at that point. So yeah, it was actually then when you pay your next quarterly GST payment, it's just going to be twice as much as the other one. So help.
This is like kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel a bit, isn't it? I
This is
think they just
this
wanted to have something to say, so
this
they said
isn't.
this.
As an accountant, this is nonsensical because this is ridiculous. This one here is just to write something on a piece of paper. And it's just like, if you ask any accountant, deferring it for a couple of months, it just makes a larger bill in a couple of months because it's not like it's going away. They're deferring it. It's kind of like their
Yeah.
tacos and tinsel thing. It's just gimmicky. They should get somebody more than somebody that took one accounting course to write some of these policies.
I would disagree with you there and say that the GST holiday or whatever they call it, vacation, I would say that that was a lot more consequential because it meant like, you could buy your booze or something and
Right.
the tax wouldn't be there. So that was actually a little bit of money. Whereas this deferral, I
There's
mean,
nothing.
I'm obviously not an accountant, but I can still see that is very sort of unimpressive, isn't it? That's very much crumbs.
It's basically we needed to write a sentence that means nothing so we could put something down on a piece of paper, and hopefully when you say a lot of words and mix one thing in there, it makes it seem like a lot. There you go.
$40
That's really
billion
it.
in liquidity. It gives you that, doesn't it? It gives you the $40 billion figure, and that looks good.
So at the end of the day, if we sum up the Liberal one, $825 per family by reducing the marginal tax rate, $825, which they say will affect about 22 million Canadians. There's $825. We won't call canceling the carbon tax for them because it was really a Polyev measure, and we'll just call that net even on that. And then eliminating the GST on homes for $1 million for first-time home buyers. Again, small segment, because not a lot of first-time home buyers can afford $1 million home or would buy a new home. Most first-time home buyers would buy, like in the used market, buy a small condo or something like that as they get into the market. There you go. And then the rest of the stuff is really for corporations, especially the MURB. And then that's it.
Well, there's also, if you scroll down a little bit, we got the energy thing there, but that again is for companies. The
Yeah.
critical mineral
More.
exploration tax credit, that's just for companies. That's for
Yeah.
corporations.
That is more for the corporations. Again, if you want to score for the corporations on the Liberal side, and then if we now go through all the the conservative stuff, 15%, saving an average family $1,800 a year. And here's a big one: if you want to save money on your alcohol, they're going to cut the annual tax hikes on alcohol. And that'll save Canadians, restaurants, producers about $40 million a year. There you go.
But then we'll lose it all in kidney transplant
There
operations,
you go.
won't we?
This is the biggest one. This is the biggest tax policy of them all combined. I think this one here is amazing for so many people. We'll bring in the Canada First reinvestment tax cut. And this thing is actually going to provide, not only will people start selling some stuff that has a bunch of gains on it, but actually reinvesting that into Canada, driving more jobs, driving more everything. This will be one of the biggest rocket fuels for the economy that there has been in a while. This is basically an investment tax credit that allows people, it benefits everybody, because if people that have capital assets sell them and then take that money and they have to reinvest it into Canadian businesses, this would be rocket fuel for the economy. This would be, instead of the government taking that money, the government's allowing you to reinvest it, and until you actually take it out and redeploy the cash and drive business in Canada. And that's what Canada needs right now. That's a huge win.
Also,
I'm going to give that a 5-star win. Oh, that's a 5-star win from an accountant. How's that?
I think that's also kind of, it's very much like tapping into the zeitgeist right now of, this little period of patriotism and specifically anti-Americanism, because that's often where the investments would otherwise go, isn't it, into the US? And I think this kind of recognizes that, and it would come at the right time. I almost feel like there's a reasonable chance that the Liberals will purloin this policy as well, because
Well, they
it
should.
is very,
It,
very
it's
smart, and that's
it's
something that Canada desperately needs. It needs capital to stay in Canada.
Yeah, because there's that giant sucking sun. We've talked about it many times. Giant sucking sun of capital leaving. This will keep capital in Canada. This is rocket fuel. This is one of the most brilliant policies the Conservatives come up with. And the ones that the Liberals came up with prior to this was increasing the capital gains in Canada. Completely different look, isn't it? Where the Liberals Liberals were squeezing the lemon to get the last bit out of the middle class. And here's one of the biggest bonuses for the middle class.
Yeah, the capital gains thing, that was a mystery, I think, to a lot of people at the time. It was what was it, $20 billion, I think they estimated that it would have raised. So
they didn't
that
like the deficits.
Wasn't an enormous amount of money, but it would have caused a huge amount of disincentive for investment.
They were running deficits like crazy because Justin Trudeau said he didn't worry about the economy, and that showed in the deficits they were running. and they were looking for a cow to milk, and there it was sitting there. Because they even floated the idea of because in Canada you don't pay principal tax residence on your principal residence. And they even floated that idea a couple of times, and the NDP has floated that idea a couple of times too, that they wanted to go after principal, the tax exemption.
I often hear that. That's often kind of like in the wind, isn't it?
Yeah,
As a kind of,
that's definitely the NDP use it all the time, and the Liberals have considered it. They actually did some research on it too. And this is the
that
biggest
would
one.
actually be the biggest step towards feudalism in,
Yeah,
pretty
it
much
would be.
the modern history of Canada.
It would definitely be back to the King days where they went and they rode into the village and said, well, you know what, you were giving like 25% of your wheat to the king. What we would like right now is the wheat fields, and you can still farm it, and we'll tell you what you can have at the end of the day.
Yeah, indeed. But it sort of presupposes that every piece of land and all the property in the country automatically belongs to the king, and you're kind of a tenant.
That's what I'm
That's
saying.
almost the
We'll tell
assumption
you,
there, isn't it? And
you
you owe
farm it,
money for that.
you farm it, you look after it, better look after it well, and then we'll let you know what you can keep. This this one here is another. This was a Stephen Harper, one of the best gifts given to Canadians back when he ran the government, and that was the tax-free savings account. That is one of the best things in Canada, and more young people need to take advantage of this. This is one of the best things, and it teaches young people how to invest. Polyev is going to increase the TFSA limit by $5,000 each year. This is huge. This is allow you all the money you worked hard for. Just think about the philosophy behind this. You work really hard for your money. Like you work so hard. You put it in the bank or in stocks or whatever you want to put it into, right? And then they tax you on that earnings. You've already paid tax on that. You've already paid tax on that money. You worked hard, you paid tax on it, and then you put it to work and you say you bought some stock or you bought even a GIC, you bought that, and they're going to tax you on that as well. What this allows you to do is allow that money that you've already paid tax on to earn money tax-free. This is huge.
But it says it's when you invest in Canadian
businesses.
companies.
Yeah, again,
Yeah, which is
driving
good. Good idea.
driving Canadian business, right? That's what Canada needs, right? It needs to take back some of that suction that's going to the US. It needs that. And that's a huge
Well, it
win.
needs to increase its productivity. Canada's in desperate need to increase its productivity per worker, and one of the main reasons the productivity is lower in Canada is because investment is a lot lower compared to the US or Germany or somewhere like that.
And if I gave 5 stars to the Canadian First Reinvestment Tax Cut, which I think is the most brilliant piece here, I got to give this one 4 stars because this is just, especially if young people start to learn how to use this. And again, you and I have talked about this. Open a Wealthsimple account and trade free. Instead of buying a $9 coffee at those fancy places, buy $9 a fractional share of any company you love, whether that's a Lululemon or a Canadian company or some other Canadian company that you want to buy. I was going to say Brookfield Asset Management.
American now,
but
so don't.
Yeah, it's American now. Plus they're tax dodgers, so no, not to them. But you can buy all the banks. You could buy Royal Bank, TD Bank, Scotia Bank. You could buy all the banks. There's tons of Canadian investments, tons and tons and tons that could use your investment money. And there's lots of little,
and a lot of
smaller ones
resources.
too. Yeah, like I invest in quite a few, like smaller ones with green technology too. Thermal energy is one. Ceramics is another one. So, there's lots of opportunities, and you can buy fractional shares in these things. And if you like the gold sector, there's tons of really good ones there, like American Eagle. I'm just saying names, but tons and tons and tons that you can do and be great for Canada as well.
And it would also give, we talk about gold companies. A pretty big gold company just recently left Canada, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it's an incentive maybe to stay. If there's going to be this bonanza of capital that is available if you're in Canada, I mean, this is exactly what the Americans are doing. They're trying to bribe companies into either staying there or going there in the first place. So, I mean, it would be a counter offer in a way, wouldn't it, to a lot of companies?
And then here's the other big one. Because right now, you and I have done the story just a couple of days ago where CRA seems to be targeting middle class because it's easy, and they don't go after the big companies. And here's Pierre Poilievre says that they're going to go after tax dodgers like Brookfield Asset Management. with like that has its headquarters, or sorry, its address there in Bermuda, one of the world's most notorious tax havens. So they're going to go after them, and it's going to be tough. So the Liberals are giving to the corporations, and the Conservatives are going after the corporations dodging taxes. Again, a complete reversal of these two parties. It used to be the other way around. They always talk about the Conservatives.
Yeah.
You listen to Jagmeet Singh talking about how the Conservatives are giving to the billionaires. This is exactly the opposite here. The Conservatives are going after the billionaires and giving to the taxpayer. So Jagmeet needs to get a different songbook, because he's definitely singing from an old hymn book.
Well, Jagmeet seems to inhabit a universe, an alternate reality, where the realignment did not occur, where the Liberals and the Conservatives didn't realign. But the reality is that's happened. And the Conservatives, to talk about the Conservatives as like being in bed with the billionaires and all the rest of it, and like the capitalist party and all that. I mean, it's hard to justify that now. And this is what, people usually use the term populism. It's almost like used as a slur or something, isn't it? But that's basically populism in a nutshell, isn't it? They're pretty hostile to corporations, whereas the Liberals, they're a bit friendlier because it's the kind of corporations that they like, the corporations that can
I,
roll out billions of dollars of new green tech and stuff like that, or
I
some
would say
Japanese car
they're,
company that
they're,
needs $20 billion to make a battery factory or whatever.
when a company is dodging taxes, they've gone past friendly. So the Conservatives will close offshore tax loopholes. They'll redirect CRA resources away from harassing small businesses and going after that wealth that's hiding overseas. Create a name and shame website. Well, you know who's going to be the first one on that website. Expand the offshore tax informant. Get the whistleblowers. Give them up to 20%. Wow. What? Holy cow. Expand the offshore tax informant program, giving whistleblowers up to 20% of the recovered funds. Can I put my name down for Brookfield first? 20% of $5 billion? How do you get your name on the list?
Some of those Brookfield funds are like $25 billion, aren't they?
That's what I'm saying. How do you get your name on the list? Like, that's huge. Like, I mean, that's a bounty on tax cheats. That's huge.
I think they do something similar at the IRS, don't they? I believe in the US.
Now, that's a bounty on tax cheating corporations. Mark Carney is not
So
going
the
to like that.
IRS, I've just done a quick look. They do between 15 and 30% of the proceeds. So yeah, it would sort of put Canada more into make it more similar to the IRS, similar to the US.
And then here's another big one, and this is like people buy cars and then people buy homes. Pierre Poilievre announced today he'll take the GST off of sale of new Canadian-made cars. That's good. Because, I mean, again, lots of people, like, you just bought a new car. And you looked at that bottom line and whatever they told you, because you've had those car troubles. We can kind of give an update. You've had those car troubles with your Kia.
Yep.
And then you just gave up on it, and you bought a brand new Honda.
Made in Alliston, Ontario.
And then you paid the HST on that.
Yeah. No, it
How
would
much
have.
was that?
Goodness me, I don't know. It must have been about 6,000 or something. It was quite a lot.
I was going to tell you, I was waiting for you to come up with a number. $6,000. But the GST would come off. I mean, he is trying to encourage the provinces to take off the PST as well, or the HST as they call it in your. The sad thing is, again, in Ontario and British Columbia, they charge the tax again, the HST, or in Canada or in British Columbia, the PST on used sales. In Alberta, you can buy a used car, no tax, right? Because there's no GST on used cars. But in the fair province of Doug Ford's world, there's 12% HST on a sale of a used car. And the same thing goes in British Columbia. There's only PST, but guess where they start the number? Instead of at 7, they started at 12. They must have had a phone call with Doug and said, hey, you know, I can get more out of them. You know, you get more out of them. There you go.
Captain Canada always finds a way.
That's another thing that typically people buy, will put money in their pocket. That's $6,000 right now that you can buy more car, or take that $6,000 and put your kids in some hockey camps or pay down some debt, all kinds of things. That's 6 grand right there.
Well, you could
So
even, if you wanted, you could go to Costco and get 2 weeks worth of groceries probably for that.
two, well, you could probably do better. Um,
Well, you could certainly put a few $1,000s into a tax-free investment account that invests in Canadian companies. That would be the ideal, wouldn't it?
well, I went first last time, so you score it. In taxes for the consumer, for the taxpayer, how would you score this?
You mean the
The
car
whole
one, the
thing, like
GST off car?
The Tory tax platform versus the Liberal tax platform.
I would say I think when you put the two next to each other, it's a little bit tricky because a lot of where the Liberals want to spend their money is, as you've said, they want to spend it. They kind of want to incentivize companies, don't
Well,
they?
that's what I'm saying. But no,
They
no,
want to do it top
just
down.
stick to the. It's for the taxpayer itself. Like so,
Yeah, I mean it's look. If
like
we're
this.
we're
Is it like
we're
that?
being we're being neutral here, we must be neutral, but the
We are.
numbers don't lie.
Well,
The
okay, we
numbers
can do.
cannot lie. That's
Yeah,
the thing about numbers. It's very hard to make them lie,
yeah.
and obviously it's undeniable that you're gonna get more in the numbers department from the Conservative
So
Party. I think it's unquestionable.
yeah, so for the taxpayer, it's a huge like by far, like the scale is so far tipped in favor of the conservatives for the taxpayer. Now for the corporations, it's definitely in favor of the liberals.
Yeah, and then the Liberals, if we could summon Mark Carney into this live stream, what
Yeah.
he would also say then is, look, it's not just about because Mark Carney's not doesn't really like tax cuts. I don't think when I listen to him speak, he seems to use the phrase tax cut almost as if it's like an insult or it's like a
Yeah.
negative term. He, in his mind, and a lot of people who are similar to him in that way of thinking, it's about what they're going to keep as well. So he keeps trying to say we're going to keep the government at a certain size with all of these benefit programs and whatever, and that's better for the consumer. That's better for the citizen, rather than tax cuts. He seems to think that tax cuts are like a waste of money, but
Yeah.
that like we said yesterday when we were talking about the housing policy, this is very distinct set of economic philosophies here from the Liberal
So
Party and the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is bottom up, so it's get the money down to the lowest possible level, which is just the citizen. Get it right down there. Whereas Carney and the Liberals, it's more like, okay, get the money through these massive corporations, and then the money will kind of, I guess, trickle down, to use a
so
phrase from the
the
1980s.
the other way to look at it is one is a distribution type policy where they collect and distribute. So they like to add taxes, collect from the taxpayer, like the King days, go out there and collect all the taxes, and then the government decides who gets the distribution. So it's a lot more control, right? So you collect taxes to the point where you're breaking people, and then you distribute back to the people that you see, or the corporations that need it more. You distribute it
Yeah,
out
it's
to the
much more
barons and stuff like that.
interventionist, isn't it? It's much more. It's almost like social democratic, like what they have in
Yeah,
like places like Sweden, or not so much nowadays, but like what they used to have. A
yeah.
bit more of a kind of command economy, more statist,
I
you
mean,
might
like
even
more
say.
like more like Russia or China. Well,
No, I would say that Carney and the Liberals, they're not secretive. I don't think. I don't. There's no conspiracy. I think what they would like Canada to be, and what they see Canada as almost being at heart, is like a Western European mixed economy, social democratic economy, which is, the Americans look at that and call that socialist.
yeah,
They look at
Venezuela.
Scandinavia and they look at
Yeah.
France, and they see socialist economies.
Yeah.
So I would say that is what the Liberals want. And if you listen to Mark Carney, like what did he say last month, or maybe it was 2 months ago? He said something along the lines of Canada is the most European, oh, it's the most European non-European country, didn't he? It was something something like that. I
Well,
think that's what Carney sees. He sees Canada as a social
so
democratic, like Scandinavian economy.
So the proof is in the pudding as well. And what we've seen over the past 10 years of distribution, collect and distribute policies is the wealth gap get wider and wider and wider. And we've seen that. So the corporations get richer and richer to the point they get so rich they don't even want to pay tax. And they actually go to tax havens because they've got so much income there. And then the middle class is squeezed to the point where they can't take it anymore. It's not a great long-term policy for like to have like a healthy middle class. It's not a good healthy middle class. So in the conservative policies here is more about allow the taxpayer to keep more of what they earn and encourage them to invest it into the economy, which is another big problem we have in this country we call Canada, and the lowest in the G7 per capita GDP.
Yeah, and it is interesting, isn't it? Because instinctively, you probably, if people that know about political history and economic history, instinctively, you might want to say that Pierre Poilievre is almost seems like he's a fan of Reaganomics
Yeah, I would
from the
say that this is
1980s.
very, very similar to that because it's putting more control back to the taxpayer, more money back in their pocket. And as an accountant, I mean, I would argue with anybody. I would absolutely, anybody that wants to come and argue with me on this and tell me that the liberal tax policies are better than this tax policy, that it's better for Canada and better for the taxpayer, more than willing to have that argument with anybody. You explain to me how enriching corporations that then tax dodge is better for Canada. Because this one goes after the tax dodgers, the other one actually just puts more money in the pockets of the tax dodgers. Because I mean, look who's winning.
Yeah,
Like
well,
in some of the policies for Carney's tax policies is we've seen $25 billion for corporations to build small homes. Guess who is a small home builder, a modular home builder? Brookfield Asset Management. $10 billion of financing for other home builders, and that's all for corporations. The MURB is all for developers and corporations to create rental units. Again, another win for the corporations. Huge win for the corporations. Jagmeet's saying, like if he had, like I mean, Jagmeet, if you're watching this show, here's all the power you need. You've been going after the wrong guy as far as billionaires. The conservative policy goes after the billionaires and gives money to the taxpayer. And that's plain and simple. Like there's nothing different in here. And you can distribute more if the GDP gets bigger. There's more to distribute because if you think about Canada's wealth beneath our feet, if we tapped that resource and took the royalties off of that, how much Canada would have? Like we look at Norway, they've suppressed our natural wealth, and that's the other big thing. Canada's biggest asset. Canada's biggest asset. You tell me what you think Canada's biggest asset is.
I think it's got to be extremely passionate and intelligent politicians like Stephen Guilbeault and Mark Holland, people like that. Chrystia Freeland, actually, as well.
And there you go. There's the sarcasm from Britain.
No, I think it might be the black stuff, black
Yeah,
gold.
but it's energy, right? It's energy, 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 and our mining and all that. So it's energy, energy, energy. And their agenda is definitely juxtaposed to that. Is it not?
Well, I mean, they're telling us it's not. But I mean, if we read between the lines, um, it does
You,
look like it
you,
does look like they're ready to give up after the first obstacle, after the first legal challenge to whatever it is they might say that they're in
so
favor
there
of.
you go. So that people won't listen anyway. We got a person that says that Carney is the only choice. He's proven himself time and time again. I don't know what he's proven himself as. How to evade taxes, how not to answer questions. Not sure what he's proven himself as. And the other person is just another Trump puppet. Again, none of those comments are true. And so these people are just going to continue. Why don't you look at it and see what's actually good for Canada and Canadians? Why don't you look at it from that perspective for once instead of just spewing political rhetoric that is nothing like look at it from the taxpayer's perspective. Who's winning? Who's winning in these policies? And that's what we're looking at it as. We're not looking at it as like this political rhetoric that talks about all you're going to do is shriek and scream about something that is completely false and baseless. There you go.
Well, indeed, yeah, it's certainly unfair to suggest that Polyev is some kind of stooge for Trump. I mean, that's
Just
and but
ridiculous.
then again, that my sort of political analyst mind, if I can glorify myself to that extent,
There you go.
would say that that's a failing of Polyev's in a sense because he hasn't emphasized the point that he is not Trump, and he really, really is not Trump. I mean, it's objectively true, but maybe he didn't or hasn't emphasized that quite enough to the extent that people can make that claim and it gets a little bit of traction, even though it's false.
Yeah, I think that if people looked at the policies, that's where we need to be, not picking a color of a sign. Look at the policies. Jean Chrétien used to be my political hero. But again, these parties have flipped. These parties have actually flipped. And we're going to try and score these on what's better for the taxpayer, because that's who's voting right now. Corporations don't get to vote. Think about that. Corporations don't get to vote, although they vote with their money and they advertise like crazy and they lobby like crazy and that, but they're not allowed to vote other than try to influence people to vote, which has really worked on this one fella here who just says all these things, obviously, because he's not looking at the real thing. There you go.
Well, it's like a lot of people I would say, I'm sorry to say, but I think probably the majority of people make their decision, and in many cases, their decision is revealed to them because it's an instinct. They don't really think about it. And then after then they start to think of the arguments to support their decision. I think that is honestly how most people operate. I don't think most people in politics, I don't think they sit down with like a spreadsheet or something and like look at the arguments and then decide. I think people do it the other way around. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of people, they've decided that they want Polyev or they've decided that they want Carney, and then they're now sort of busily creating reasons to justify that
I
decision.
don't even
But
think,
I think the reality is they already made the decision a long time ago.
yeah.
They weren't argued into it.
I think you give them too much credit myself. I think that some watch certain things and it's just been, it's been certain networks have painted the conservatives to be the bad guys and the liberals to be these heroes that it's a, like a must win, but they don't look at the real issues. I mean, if you look at the destruction of media across Canada, if you look at our per capita GDP, if you look at our economy, you look at the place we're at the mercy of the United States. It's turned its back on us. We're here because of bad policy, really bad policy. And our number one, this is key for Canadians. This is absolutely key. If you believe in Canada, we're the second largest landmass in the world, and we are the richest resource nation by diversity in the world, by far, the policies run against our asset. The policies that are in place for the last 10 years actually go juxtaposed to what we have. You know what I mean? It's like you have all the gold in the world and you're busily trying to tell the people in the world that gold is useless. I mean, think about it. You say if you have all the gold or whatever substance you want to say you have it all, that everybody else wants it, but you spend all your time telling people how useless it is and you refuse to sell it to them. Tell me I'm wrong.
It's
Tell me I'm wrong.
difficult to understand, isn't it, at times?
Hey, tell me I'm wrong. You have whatever that is. Let's say it's hockey cards. You have all the hockey cards. Everybody wants to buy them. And you tell people, no, they're junk. You don't want these. Well, we're going to make these other things. We're going to make these ringette cards for you. You're going to love those. They're going to be the best cards ever. We don't have them yet, but we're going to make them one day. What's that?
Curling cards.
Or here's a better analogy. You have all the gold. Everybody wants the gold. Everybody absolutely wants the gold in the world. But you want to sell them Trillium. Remember Trillium?
Yeah.
Or, like from Star Trek? We don't have any yet. We don't even know how to make it yet. But that's
Trilithium.
Trilithium, yeah. Trilithium crystals. We don't have it yet. But man, when we do, we're going to be the energy superpower. Once we develop trilithium crystals and have warp engines, oh my God, we are going to be so great. There you go. That's it in a nutshell. You have one party that says we have gold and we're willing to sell it to other people. And the other party says we have dilithium crystals and we're willing to sell it to you.
When
when
we invent the
when
technology.
we invent the technology. In the meantime, all that gold we have is junk. You don't want that. We need to keep that in the ground because if we take it out of the ground, there's going to be massive holes in the ground or something. That's it.
Yeah.
There it is, broken down into something as simple as you get. So you can either be the believer of Jack and the Beanstalk and the magic beans, or you can sell what we have.
What would Picard do? That's what you need to ask.
Yeah, he would do the practical thing, I think. Wouldn't he?
I reckon, I mean, for sure, that's what Kirk would do. We don't even have to ask that question. But yeah, I
Well,
think
what is the
Picard probably
practical
would as
thing?
well.
What is the practical thing? Because like the people are going to be shrieking here, saying that like taking that stuff out of the ground is going to burn the earth to the ground. But if we don't take it out of the
Yeah.
ground and sell it to somebody like the Norwegians, somebody else will sell it to them. So we'll just
Indeed,
impoverish our nation.
unfortunately, Canada doesn't control the world. The
Yeah.
world pretty much doesn't care what
So
Canada does ever, and probably never will. So,
so
I mean,
we'll,
it doesn't really matter, does it, what we do?
and if you look at the end result, if we follow that plan where we just work on that agenda, which happens to be aligns with Brookfield Asset Management, again, who's getting rich off of that plan and who's getting poor? It's pretty simple stuff.
Yeah. But the argument,
Pretty
if
simple stuff.
we're gonna steel man them, we're gonna do them an honest turn. The argument from the Liberals is that this, even though it may be a little bit distasteful to give loans and grants and whatnot to big companies, this is what will save the Canadian economy. This is what will get growth. This is what will, Carney would probably say something like, I've got a long experience. I know how to build things. And he'll say, this is how you do it. This is how it has to happen.
Well, I
All
would
my
say,
experience at central banks, you got to get the money, you got to make the capital available, then they'll build it, and then the lives of Canadian citizens will improve. Whereas
well,
Pierre Poilievre, silly Pierre Poilievre, he just wants to throw tax cuts at people, and nothing will happen. That would be his argument.
yeah, well, I would say your last 10 years are proof in the pudding of what you've done. Same cabinet, same people, same policies, and you're expecting a different
But
result. There was somebody
didn't
that said
involve
something
Mark
about
Carney,
that.
did it? It didn't involve the Saint Mark Carney.
He was the economic advisor.
Well, that seems to be forgotten, I guess. Maybe
He
the
was
argument
he
is
was the
he was
economic
advising, but he
advisor.
wasn't being listened
Hey,
to.
hey, and again, think of that. He was the economic advisor, so he was in a position to advise on the economy. He was involved in the finances of Canada at the same time that Brookfield Asset Management was dodging taxes.
Yeah, a
And
little
he
bit
was
of a
advising
conflict of
them,
interest there.
as the chairman, he was advising them how to dodge taxes. At the same time, he was advising Canada how to strengthen our economy. What do you, like, think about that. Think about that. If you're sitting in a room right now, think about that. He's advising Canada on economic policy, and at the same time, he's advising Brookfield Asset Management how to dodge $5 billion in taxes.
Yeah, but I guess the argument then was that somehow that was consistent and that was all right because I
I don't
guess
know.
Brookfield was the Canadian
If
crown
you're
jewel, wasn't it? But not anymore.
okay, okay, but I'm just saying, if you're looking to hire somebody, this is the resume. Here, I've advised you on economic policy in Canada, which is Canada's economy is like the worst in the G7 is GDP per capita. So obviously failure at that. I would give you a fail. And then on the other side, Brookfield Asset Management made out like a bandit, not honestly though, made out like a bandit because they cheated on their taxes.
Well, they would say that it was all perfectly legal. No cheating involved, sir.
Oh, dodged their taxes.
Yeah,
Dodged their
dodge.
taxes.
Shrewdly and wisely,
tax
um,
tax dodgers.
be tax efficient.
There you go. You're not going to see this stuff on other networks. They're surely not going to play it out like this. But we're telling you which ones work good for the taxpayer, the voter. The taxpayer is the voter. Remember, the taxpayer is the voter. So you can vote to put more money in your own pocket, or you can vote to put it in the corporation's pocket and hope they give some of it back to you. And we can see that some of the corporations haven't given it back to you because where did they put it? In the Bahamas, in the Caymans.
Yeah, the Cayman Islands. Well, I mean,
Right?
I suppose the hope is like the hope if you buy into the plan, Mark Carney's plan, the hope is something along the lines of like the experts, the boffins, and the people that know how to do all this stuff. that they'll get it going really quickly, really competently, and it'll kind of create a chain reaction of success, and
So,
Canada will thrive as a
so
consequence.
is what you're saying is if they'll make so much money, these corporations that dodge taxes, that at some point they'll feel guilty, or that bike shop in the Bahamas won't be able to contain all the money, that they'll actually have to bring some back? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it is a pretty small shop, you
You know
know?
what I mean? Hopefully they make a ton of money having all these corporations. Because we had Obama on this morning. If you want to go back and watch our news hour in the morning, hopefully, with all these corporations that are jammed into this one little office there, that guy that owns that building must be making like scads and scads of money. Or is he just
Yeah,
another guy
well,
that's just used as a shill for his like little post office box?
yeah, I was going to say nobody else really is making any money other than those companies. So there's got to be somebody getting a bit of that.
I mean, I don't believe the guy that says, "Hey, I know how to dodge taxes and I know how to go after dodge taxes, so vote for me."
Yeah, vote for me and I'll close the loopholes. It's
Oh my
poacher
God.
turned gamekeeper, isn't it? That's the technical
Yeah,
term.
like the biggest guy running all the car theft ring is telling you that hire me. Like I'll tell you how to get people to stop stealing cars. I guess for some people they would say, "Oh, that's awesome." Anyway, there you go. That's our. We're gonna do this with all the platforms. This is in my book, a huge win for the conservatives and for the taxpayer, and a great win, I guess, for the corporations if you want to go with Carney, and actually a scary thing for corporations if the conservatives wins, because they're going to go after you, and then it's going to have to start paying taxes in Canada. Wow, that would suck, eh?
Yeah, or I suppose you could look at it from the other direction and say it Polyev, if he's really serious about this, might scare off some of these companies, and it might backfire. But
Well,
it
if
all
they try,
depends, really. It depends what options they have.
I'd be careful to go dodge taxes in the U.S. right now. They got some guys with AI that are flipping rocks like you wouldn't believe. So
Yeah, unless it's made in America, then you can dodge all the taxes you want.
there you go. That's that's our election 2025 coverage for this week, and we're back next week, and we're going to do more of these. Plus, we're on every morning at 9 a.m. for about an hour, a little bit over an hour usually, and it's kind of a cool show, I think. Anyway, Ian and I do think so. We also try to help you learn some things, and we share our opinions as well. So it's a different, and that's why we call it the really big show. Again, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Jim and Ian. Trying to break it down to the common person too, right? So that it's not really hard to understand. So there you go. That's our show. Thank you for watching Now Media.